is nice. This is taking significantly longer than I thought, but I am enjoying doing it. We're on to red. We've got green and gold left to go. So let's take a look at Arnie Broken Bow. This card is super exciting. I think this is pretty sweet. First of all, that artwork, love it. Flavor text: I headbutted a troll and won. Good man. That's what dwarfs should be all about. I'm so about this noise. 3 mana 3/3 with haste. That's just a pretty damn good body. Aggressive red deck is happy to have a 3/3 with haste for 3. And then this thing has a boast trigger for a colorless mana. You can change its base power to 1 plus the greatest power among other creatures you control. So this thing scales. I find it hard to believe there's too many Arnie decks that are going to be playing many things that are huge. But I suppose this means it does kind of play well in mid-range shells with like Terror of the Peaks or the red dragon that we're going to see in a little further down the spoiler. I like this. I think 3 mana 3/3 with haste is just a reasonable body. We've seen that like Gruul Spellbreaker has been a pretty damn playable card in both standard and historic. I can see this card filling a similar slot and being able to see some play. It being legendary, a little bit of a downside, so there's a chance you play like 1 or 2 of these, maybe not the full amount. We've seen a few cards that care about Berserkers. We obviously saw the pseudo Midnight Reaper thing in black that cares about elves and Berserkers, so you could always be Berserker tribal and curve that into Arnie, and then killing this thing gets a lot worse because your opponent's drawing cards off of it. So maybe there's a little something there as well. I like this card. I think the flavour is very cool. Feels very dwarvy, berserker-y to me. Can't argue with a badass who headbutts a troll and wins. Seems pretty good to me. Let's take a look at this first of the red gods here. Is it Burgi, God of Storytelling? I know a few people are quite excited about this one as well. So let's pull up the front side on the screen for you. Take a look at it real quick while I keep topping myself up. I've done a lot of talking today, so struggling a bit. Burgi here, 3 mana 3/3, so passes the vanilla test. Not anything wrong with that. Whenever you cast a spell, add red. Until the end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So that's interesting. We've talked a few times today about how a few cards, like the new Shapeshifter guy and the dragon again that's a little further down here, we'll get to in a bit, kind of feel like they can be used to enable Stormy-style combos. This is very much the same. Like, you're just generating mana off of casting your spells. Lets you have some very bizarre, bonkers kind of turns. So I imagine if a deck that can really utilize that extra red mana exists, then this might go into it. Also, that second line of text you see under there, creatures you control that can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. Means a card like this might just be fine with something like Arnie, for example. It's a bit awkward to curve them into each other, but you could just be like, Burgi on 3 into Arnie, attack on 4, pay a mana, which is what you do anyway. So I guess on turn 5 you can boast twice, not that you want to, because it's Arnie. I don't know. I'm trying to think real quick about boast cards we've seen, and that doesn't work. That one doesn't work. Ignore that. Don't do that. That sucks. But there might be something else you can boast that doesn't completely suck with the mana you've made from Burgi. If that's the case, this card gets a little bit better in that capacity too. Let's take a look at the backside of it real quick, see what the backside does. It's a Horn, Harnfell. It's a 5 mana artifact. You may discard a card to exile the top 2 cards of your library and play them this turn. That's kind of interesting. 5 mana is a lot, but we've established that there's cards that want you to discard cards right now. This is a card advantage engine for a red deck. I feel like this is kind of the thing that you're going to be playing this for the front side, and then when you're really running out of cards, you can play your second one for the backside, or the one you drew on turn 9 for the backside, and just kind of like churn your draw step into relevant spells. Don't think it's much of a selling point though. It's probably, again, fairly good in Commander, I would think, but not really for constructed formats. Not sure about this one. Feels like it needs a stormy kind of shell to really thrive. Calamity Bearer. Now this card is interesting. If the giant deck is good, this is probably in it, I think. 4 mana 3/4, obviously not the best rate, but that's because it's secretly not a 4 mana 3/4. If a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or a player, it deals double that amount of damage instead. Croxer hitting you for 12 does not sound fun. Croxer's discard hitting you for 6 is a loss of life, I believe. So I don't think that works. But Croxer hitting you for 12 does not sound fun. This is hitting you for 6. This does not work with Stomp, because Bonecrusher Giant is a giant, but Stomp is not. So sadly, no 4 damage Stomps with this one either, which is a bit crap. This thing hits hard, but it's going to depend on what kind of giants you can play with it. It seems fine on the curve as like a curve topper for 4 mana. And we've seen, hitting with double damage, extra damage, kind of like Torbrand from the past with all the red spells, can be really effective at just kind of ending games. And I can see there being some kind of world where you're just casting a Bonecrusher Giant on turn 3 or some other 3-mana giant into this, and it attacks for 8, which is a lot of damage. More importantly, this isn't legendary, and they can stack. Very much like Angrass Marauders did, courtesy of Winota and stuff like that in the past. So these are obviously non-human creatures that can trigger Winota when they attack, so maybe that's something you can do if you've got bigger creatures to find off of Winota, like Kenrith and stuff like that. But obviously I think you want a few more giants in your deck than that. But maybe just these and Bone Crushers and stuff might be good enough. Maybe some combo with Quakebringers. Yeah, maybe. Absolutely. Self-mill. Yeah, totally. Because we've seen like Glimpse the Cosmos and stuff that might be pretty reasonable with a card like this too. So I think this has a lot of potential. Obviously needs to find a good home, but definitely potential tucked away in Calamity Bearer. I like it quite a lot. Crush the Weak is not a card I've seen. Let's take a look at this real quick. This does not seem very good. This is just some limited fodder tucked away down so far. I'm going to look at Dragon Kim Berserker real quick. Not because I think this card is good, but I want to acknowledge that it exists. I appreciate that, right? I'm jamming through. Enjoy your food, and hopefully I can be a reasonable companion. This card intrigues me because it feels like a seed. It feels like a plant. So for those that don't really look into Wizards' card design philosophies or the way they go about designing sets, let me explain to you that they go out of their way to try and seed cards in sets that will be like payoffs or guidelines for future archetypes, or like future important things that sets are going to care about. And that's what this card feels like to me. So it being a 2-mana 2/2 with First Strike is actually just fine. That's a pretty reasonable attacker, to be honest. But both abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate for each dragon you control. Now, there are a few dragons in this set. There are, of course, already a few decent dragons like Terror of the Peaks in Standard. But knowing the D&D set is on the way, it feels to me like a dragon payoff is kind of what you're going to want for what will no doubt have some huge dragons and nasty guys for Dungeons and Dragons, I would think. This card is also kind of self-enabling. It has a boast cost of 5 mana to make a 5/5 red dragon with flying. So every single time you attack with this and boast, its own boast cost is then getting cheaper. I don't think this card is good enough by itself. But I'm excited to know it exists, because 2-mana 2/2 First Strike is a fine body, it's very aggressive, well costed. And if there are good 3 to 4 mana dragons that you could just kind of go up the curve with, this thing's going to be really good in that deck, because you're just never running out of things to do. So yeah, seems good to me. I think this is a card that is probably a plant for the future, but I like it. I think it's pretty good. Yeah, I think it's worth noting that this dying to Stomp is going to hold it back for some time, at least to some extent. But I think it's a card that's good to know about because it feels like a plant, at least to me. So cool, we've got some more draft filler. Don't think any of these are particularly relevant. Next up, we've got Frostbite. Let's look at this thing real quick. A lot of people very excited about this one. I know a lot of people are very sad about this one as well, because it's the kind of card that very much encourages snow basics to just be better than regular basics, a discussion that we've had many, many times on the channel at this point. But Frostbite here, 1 mana red snow instant, deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you control 3 or more snow permanents, it does 3 damage instead. This card's good. It's not really too much to say about it. If you've got enough snowlands in play, it's just a pseudo bolt to creature or planeswalker. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a shock effect, and those kind of things are all just like fine in standard. Obviously, can't go face, so kind of the thing that mono red is going to want a little bit less. But all your snow-based mid-range decks probably just pretty happy to have some number of these if they're red. Seems like an efficient removal spell that if you're playing snowlands is very efficient. So seems good to me. Okay, this is the one that some people think may be a problem, and I am inclined to agree to some extent. Let's take a look at Goldspan Dragon here. 5 mana 4/4 with flying and haste. So we know this is a functional stat line because cards like Glorybringer and stuff in the past have been just, good, very good. Format staples. 5 mana 4/4s flying with haste, good stuff. When it attacks or becomes the target of a spell, you may create a treasure token. Treasures sacrifice for 2 mana. I think a lot of people, when they first saw this card, didn't realize some of the shenanigans you could do with it, and as to why it might be very, very good. I just looked at it as like a well-costed threat that had a little bit of upside. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things that came to mind when I first looked at this card that made me think that maybe there's a little something here. This can be a ritual in a roundabout way, because every single time it attacks or you target it, you're making a mana. While it's in play, the treasure that you create sacks for 2 mana. So if you're targeting it with 1 mana spells, Defiant Strikes that draw a card and replace themselves, or anything like that, you are actually going up in mana. So that seems kind of hard to do, especially on a 5 mana card. It seems like a bit of a narrow, use, but it's something the card can do, and that's something you want to pay attention to, because you never know what might just randomly break that ability out of nowhere. I was really surprised to see that this made a treasure when it attacked, because it's kind of scary that blue-red can hit you with this thing on turn 5 and hold up negate, or hold up disdainful stroke, because they can just cast this and have 2 mana up from attacking, which is really, really sweet. This is a dragon, as we said. A few things care about dragons that we've looked at so far today. I don't think this card is a problem like some people necessarily think it does, but it's subtly quite good. Making extra mana, treasures obviously have tons of payoffs over the history of Magic. Being able to hold up counter magic or interaction or whatever the turn you attack with this thing, that seems good to me. I like this a lot. I think it's pretty damn well costed. Obviously fighting on the 5-drop slot for all kinds of other things, mainly Terror of the Peaks and a lot of those shells, but I think this is good. It hits hard, and it does a lot of very good things. Definitely a card worth paying attention to. Seems good if 2 mana spells are relevant main deck options. Exactly. Like Teferi with his +1. Yeah, good shout, actually. Very much so. That's a good comparison to draw. I like drawing the comparison to Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Very much because, again, the dragon costs 3 mana if you can use the mana immediately, basically. It lets you double spell very, very early. Let's look at Magda here, Brazen Outlaw. I think this is a card that might have more of a home in Eternal formats than Standard or the like, but it's really good. So we got a 2 mana card here again, 2 mana 2/1. Other dwarves you control get +1/+0. 2 mana Pseudo Lords, good stuff. Always pretty reasonable for tribes that care about them. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. You can even just trigger this by crewing a vehicle, which we've already established. There are some pretty reasonable vehicles in this set. So maybe Magda plays pretty well with the Omen Seer or the back of the Blue God, the 3/3 ship. You just get to tap it, crew your vehicle, and make a treasure in the process. And then you can sacrifice 5 treasures to search your library for any artifact or dragon and put it onto the battlefield. Now, that's obviously very strong, but it's not easy to get 5 treasures either. Obviously, you've got this making treasures, you've got the dragon we just looked at making treasures. You know, in Historic, you've even got stuff like Captain Laddery Storm, or, you know, some of the older Ixalan-based payoffs, like Pirate's Pillage, and stuff like that. So, it's certainly not impossible. But I think you would need a pretty disgusting artifact or dragon to be able to go and get to make that investment worthwhile. The first thing that pumps to my mind immediately would be some more vehicles, something like Sky Sovereign, because obviously you can, you know, play vehicles to crew, you know, use this thing to crew it. Not Sky Sovereign itself, but you know, another vehicle that's worth playing that you can go shooter for. But I really don't hate the idea of being able to go and get big artifacts, because obviously if you're making tons of treasures, it's actually just not that hard for you to cast those artifacts if you draw them. So maybe it's just something like, you know, Godfarer's Gift, or something else that normally gets shooted up by Khan, even like a Chroma's Memorial in Historic or something like that. That flipping into play off of a Magda would be pretty disgusting if your deck's full of creatures and vehicles and stuff like that. So maybe there's some potential there. This seems like a card that's very easy to break. It's either bulk bin or like exceedingly good in the deck that it's in. And I think that's a good design. I think this plays very well. It's very unlikely to ever be blank if you've got other dwarfs in your deck, because it just plays like an anthem. And at the very worst, it attacks and it makes a mana. So it can never really be that bad. I like Magda. Think it's cool. Think it'll probably see a fair bit of play across formats when people figure out what it is that we're supposed to be trying to do with it. Okie dokie. We've got Quakebringer here, a card that was talked about a little bit earlier on. This is another giant that has a lot of people excited. Quakebringer here, 5 mana, 5/4, not the best of stat lines. Your opponent cannot gain life. That's a pretty relevant line of text. We've already seen there's a couple of life gain payoffs in this set, like the White Angel that cares about gaining life off other angels you play, stuff like that. We saw Rampaging Ferocidon get banned in Standard a few years ago, so clearly a very relevant line of text. At the beginning of your upkeep, Quakebringer deals 2 damage to each opponent. This ability triggers only if Quakebringer is on the battlefield, or if it's in your graveyard and you control a giant. And I think that's where the money is, ladies and gents, because again, very much like Glimpse the Cosmos, these cards, I can just mill them over in my Croxer deck, and I can get value. This obviously starts doing 4 damage with Calamity Bearer, and that's scary. That adds up real fast. If your Croxers are hitting for 12, and this thing is doing 4 damage a turn because you milled it over off of your Tiramet Calls the Dead, like, that's terrifying. More importantly, this thing can foretell as well. You can cast this on turn 4 if you want to spend 2 mana foretelling it on turn 2 to then curve into it on turn 4. So you either cast it after your Calamity Bearer, or you can even cast it before your Calamity Bearer if you want to, depending on how you curve things out. I like this. I think the money is putting it in the graveyard, like milling it over for free and getting value by having a giant in play. Like, we've just seen a fair number of playable giants. Like, Bonecrusher Giant was already one of the most played cards in the format. It's really not that hard to make it better. Very much like Croxer, to be honest. So I can definitely see this thing being a house and seeing a fair bit of play. It might even be good in like Teamer with Uro in Historic, because again, for some reason that card is also a giant, not like it needed much more help. But I like it. I like Quakebringer. I think it's pretty cool. And we'll almost certainly find a home if the giant deck is good. So I can get on board with that. I don't think Reckless Crew is very good. Not going to waste too much time on that one, to be honest. I've got some more limited filler knocking around down here. What does this do? Okay, so this card is interesting to talk about. Let's look at Surtland Flinger. I don't think this card is particularly good by itself, but it is a 5 mana 4/6, whatever stat line. Whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice another creature. If you do, it deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. If it was a giant, it deals twice that much damage instead. pretty clear that you could probably set up some kind of stupid one-turn kill shenanigans with Calamity Bearers and stuff, because doubling up damage by flinging things, people are going to die very, very fast. I don't think it's going to be any good. It's just very expensive, but worth noting it's a kind of card that does exist. You can enable this with some of the other giant payoffs, so probably not the worst. Not what the fuck that was. Pardon my language. Alright, cool. Let's look at Tibolts Trickery. Now this one is spicy. There is some shenanigans going around with Tibolts Trickery. First of all, that artwork is fantastic. I like it quite a lot. This card was shared in the Discord by Rai when it was first spoiled, asking for opinions on it, and it took me ages to kind of just sit here and be like, what is everything this card does? It has so many words. 2 mana red instant that the first words on it are counter target spell. Now that's got my attention, and the rest of this is choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards, and then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with a different name. You then cast that without paying its mana cost, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. So the immediate thought for a lot of people was modern, just trying to cheat Eldrazi into play by countering your own spell, you know, cast an Ornithopter, Tibolts Trickery it, and spin it into an Emrakul. And I know Frank Carston's done some articles on that and how likely that math is, depending on how you build your deck and stuff. So there's some degenerate stuff to be done in older formats with this if you want to. The other combo that was pointed out to me that I think is really slick is this with Drannith Magistrate, which does, in fact, stop your opponent from casting a replacement spell. So you can obviously just have like Magistrate in play and Tibolts Trickery their thing, and it is just straight up counterspell at that point, which is kind of interesting. Yep, Teferi Time Raveler, very much the same as Drannith Magistrate for older formats. So definitely could see some flexible kind of play there. Drannith Magistrate is already kind of playable in the World of Adventures anyway. It's also got a creature type that counts for party. So there might be a deck there that can just main deck or sideboard these trickeries and just have it be counterspell sometimes, which seems kind of okay. I'm sure there'll be scenarios when you're also just going to Tibolts Trickery your own creature and try and higher roll, depending on if you have Craterhoof Behemoth in your deck or something. Yeah, very similar to the Emrakul shenanigans that we expect in Modern. Yeah, I think this card is, if it's good, it's probably going to be doing something unfair. And if it can successfully do that unfair thing, then yeah, cool. Maybe we're talking. Maybe we are talking. Card's very cool. Again, another example of a very unique set. Unique card, I should say, in this set, which is nice to see. Toralf here, the God of Fury, the other red god, of course, has 2 sides. Is a 5/4 with trample for 4 mana. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls deals excess non-combat damage, it will deal damage equal to the excess to any target other than the original permanent. So before we look at the backside of this, from a front side perspective, the only thing that immediately comes to mind is Chandra's Incinerator. Because Chandra's Incinerator, obviously, you throw a burn spell at your opponent's head and it kills creatures while it's at it. You can just set up a nasty chain of wiping your opponent's board with Toralf and Chandra's Incinerator. Outside of that, I suppose it depends on how easy it is to be dealing excess non-combat damage. I didn't mean to make you laugh your food up. My bad. Yeah, so how easy is it to do excess non-combat damage? Honestly, in a world of Lovestruck Beast, I know we keep saying it, but in a world of Lovestruck Beast, that's not very easy. People are already complaining that there's no roast or 5 damage effect in the format to easily deal with the Lover Boy. So dealing excess damage doesn't seem like it'll be particularly easy to do. The rate on this card is pretty good though. 5/4 with trample is fine, like certainly fine. I'm not excited about this card's front side, but I could definitely see it seeing some play. What does the backside do? It's a hammer. Let's take a look at the hammer. Another piece of equipment, which we've already established we could be looking for in red-white shells, is a 2-mana one again. It has equipped creature has 2 mana tap. Take the hammer off. It deals 3 damage to any target. Put the hammer back in the owner's hand. Equipped creature has +3/+0 as long as it is legendary. That's really hard to evaluate. That does a lot of things. It's another example, very much like the White God, of a very cheap, efficient piece of equipment. If you're like Legendary Tribal, this might be fine. +3/+0 for 2 mana is not a bad rate. The top ability is really hard to evaluate. Like, being able to just pay 2, tap tonight, and bolt things obviously plays really well with the front side, so drawing a second copy becomes a lot better than before. But I don't think this card is like independently good. It just feels very slow. You know, casting this, equipping it, having a creature that's not summoning sick to tap and do the thing. Yeah, I'm not about it. I don't think it's great. So I'm not massively excited for Toralf, unfortunately. This is another interesting one here. Tundra Fumarole was a card that scared a lot of people when it was first spoiled, but I think they calmed down a bit after kind of rethinking things through. 3 mana snow sorcery. It deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. You then get to add a colorless to your mana pool for every snow that you use to cast a spell, and it doesn't leave your mana pool until the end of the turn. This card is... I know I keep saying it, and it sucks to keep having to comparing cards to Eldraine, but this card doesn't kill a Lovestruck Beast. Like, if we look at Thundering Rebuke, it's just a card that doesn't see any play currently, because killing a 4 toughness creature doesn't really matter. If this did 5 damage, it would be huge, but it might also be a bit too good at that point. However, adding colorless, being able to cast this for free is not nothing. I know we were pretty excited about potentially like casting free Crystalline Giants off of this, because unfortunately it does only make colorless mana, so you can only do colorless things with the mana that it makes. So, you know, you can definitely pick up some good tempo by fumarolling a creature and then casting a Crystalline Giant off the mana. Soul Seer at 3C sideboard play, yeah, absolutely, but Soul Seer is also an instant, right? And does 5 damage, which is kind of important in a world of Lovestruck Beast. I would love this card to be good. I think it's really sweet. It's a really cool design, but the truth is I don't think it kills anything that matters, and there's not a lot of good things to spend 3 colorless mana on when you're done with it. Oh no, I was 100% agreeing with that, John Ramos. It's the first thing I said. Like, it would not be too good. Oh, sure, I misread your comment now. It does hit Questing Beast, sure. I don't know. Like, I'm probably being like a bit skeptical and a bit safe by saying that at 5 damage it might be a bit too good, sure. But I just think this thing sucks, and it makes me sad. Like, it's the kind of card that I really wish would be kind of cool, but it's also the kind of card that if you push it too far, is really scary. Does it activate the Snow Mutavault? I have to check the wording on that again, because I don't remember exactly. I'm sure if someone in chat knows that for a fact, they can let you know, but I need to go and check the wording again. Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right, John Ramos. Lovestruck Beast is definitely the litmus test of the format currently. You just need to be able to deal with 5 toughness, which is kind of why Red is struggling to play spells that aren't Claim the Firstborn, which is kind of what makes this not great, sadly, I think. As cool as the card is, I would really like it to find a home somewhere. It looks like the end of Red for us, which...